Joining us today. Thank you. Yes. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We know you guys are very busy, summer, whether you're incoming or continuing student. Thank you so much. We're excited to give you some insights today on loan borrowing and resources so you can start out your year as successful as possible. And yeah, so I'll first introduce myself. My name is Rosanna Hill-Thomas. I'm an Associate Director of Financial Aid at the UC Berkeley Law School.
And I'm Teresa Pott-Braun. I'm the National Director in the Center for Education and Financial Capability at AccessLex Institute. And we are really proud to partner with Berkeley Law to bring our free Max financial education program and to partner on this webinar. So thank you very much for the partnership, Rosanna.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so ready for your slide. There we go. All right, here's what we're going to go over today. Quick overview, try to get you as much information in a quick amount of time as possible. Teresa will begin the first few sections and I will finish up with loan amounts, how to determine those strategies, and then how to actually accept your loans in Cal Central.
All right, so if you have not already created an Ask Edna account, Edna is the education network at AccessLex. It's an online platform, and that is where our Max program lives. Max is our financial education program. So if you haven't created an account, you can do that at askedna.accesslex.org. Go to that URL, or if you have your phone handy, you can just scan the QR code and it'll take you to the registration page. Next slide. And while you're doing that, I just wanted to tell you just a little bit about AccessLex. We are a nonprofit organization and we're over 40 years old. We've been around since 1983. And our Max Financial Education Program is something that we launched in 2017 after we did a large pilot study in 2016, where we spoke to over 5,000 then enrolled 1L, 2Ls, and 3Ls at 43 different ABA approved law schools all over the country. And we asked them all sorts of questions related to a financial literacy program just for law students. Should we design one? What should we put in it? How should we deliver it? They provided us with great information. And in the fall of 2017, we launched Max. And we started out, we hoped we'd get 60 law schools that first year. We got 120. And we are now up to 187. We provide this program totally, absolutely free of charge to ABA approved law schools and their students. You can use it even after you graduate. It will always be free. And there is no marketing on the platform. There are no pop-ups. And we don't do anything with your email information. We don't sell it or give it away. This is our program on a platform that we manage. So we hope you'll take advantage of it. There are so many incredible resources on Max, so much so that, next slide, we are now the award-winning Max by AccessLex program. We were awarded the Outstanding Educational Program of the Year award in the fall of 2022 by the Association for Financial Counseling and Planning Education, and that's actually the organization that oversees the credential that everyone on my team has to have, and that's the AFC, Accredited Financial Counselor. So we're really proud of the award, and we're excited that they thought that it was a good enough program. We knew it. Of course, I'm totally biased, but to receive this award. Next slide. So what's in Max? The students in our study told us several things. They said we would like online accessible coursework 24/7. So we have a digital platform. That's the Max platform that lives on the education network at AccessLex. Very short courses. There's a 1L, 2L, 3L course. The information that's in there is what the students told us to put in there. So in the 1L curriculum are things like budgeting, understanding interest and how it works on your student loans, also how it can work to our advantage when we are in a position where we are earning interest rather than paying it. information on summer financial planning. And that's in the 1L course. 2L course is all about crafting your career and the financial things related to thinking about your career. And the 3L course is Life After Law School, which is basically a crash course on personal finance. So we put all that in. We also have Max events, which are workshops and webinars. Workshops, we come to campus and do those in person. And then we host live webinars almost every week, even in the summer, in the day, in the night, and you can join on a whole host of topics. They said they wanted access to a credentialed professional that they could talk about their specific information. And that's why we offer the free, like everything else with Max, completely free, one-on-one coaching with myself and the members of my team. We're all accredited financial counselors. And for those of you that snatched up the coaching spots after this webinar, they went very quickly yesterday. I'm looking forward to talking with you when we're through here. They also asked for snippets of current personal finance topics that we could put out there in terms of blog posts. We offer that. And we also have a scholarship incentive program. So the more that you engage with the courses, the more events that you attend, the better your chances of winning a scholarship in our drawings that we do 4 times a year. Next slide. So this is what the registration page looks like. Again, it's askedna.accesslex.org. We only ask for a few pieces: your name, your school email, you make a password for yourself, you indicate you're a current law student, and you select your law school from the drop-down. Again, we will never share or sell your information. Everything is kept on our own platform. Next slide. Once you enter, this is what you're going to see and on the landing page. And so you want to go into the tile where it says Max by AccessLex on the upper right-hand side where the arrow's pointing. So once you go in there, you're going to see there's a 1L course, a 2L course, a 3L course. You can also search by topic with a little spyglass. So say you want to learn something about investing, you just type in investing and resources will come up. So when you click on the Max tile, next slide, please, you will see this is the inside landing page for Max. And in order to get to the courses, you will go where the arrow says complete your Max lessons. But if you want to schedule a coaching call, there's that long rectangular tile in the center with orange that says schedule a free call. If you want to attend a webinar, just click on the attend a Max event and it'll show you all of our upcoming webinars. And we have a pretty robust schedule even over the summer. So jump in on some of those and you'll get an entry in our scholarship drawings as well as learning some stuff. And then you can peruse around. We have a great calculator. We have a scholarship data bank that I'll tell you a little bit more about in just a moment. So you can wander around in there and read whatever else is of interest to you. Next slide, please. I can't emphasize enough the opportunity to meet with someone from my team. We're having a lot of calls right now with entering students to chat about budgets, understanding their student loans, how that all fits together with the cost of attendance, which Rosanna is going to talk about, and just helping them understand, especially if you've never borrowed loans before for your education, talking through that information. But even after you matriculate, we talk to students about all manner of personal finance things. The only thing we are not able to do is we cannot give you specific investment, tax, or legal advice. So I had a young gentleman make an appointment one time, and when I called him at the appointed hour, he said he had this hot stock tip that he wanted to run by me and see what I thought about it. And that is something we are not allowed to talk about. Investing, foundational information, of course, but not specific investment, tax, or legal advice. So I encourage you to take advantage of this. Next slide, please. And with our scholarship entries, again, every workshop or webinar you attend for the first time, you will receive a code. You put the code in. that gives you an entry in our scholarship drawings. You go in and complete your 1L Financial Foundations course. If you're a 1L, there's 8 items in there, and each one will earn you a scholarship entry. The courses are short. There are 8 items in there, but each item doesn't take longer than 10 or 15 minutes to complete. That was intentional. The students said, make this quick, get to the point with the information, and that's what we did. We listened to the students. If you attend at least 2 events and do the course for your year in school, so for those of you who are 2Ls out there, you do the 2L course, 3Ls, you do the 3L course, you will earn 10 bonus entries for our scholarship drawings. Next slide, please. And we give away a lot of money. In November and February, on the first of the month, we have a drawing, and we draw 6 students, 2 1Ls, 2 2Ls, and 2 3Ls. And we give each one of those students a $5,000 scholarship. Then in April, we select 9 students randomly from the entries that they have, and 6 of them, 2 1Ls, 2 2Ls, and 2 3Ls, get a $25,000 scholarship, and 3 of them, 1 per class, they get a $40,000 scholarship. And then if you are a 1L sitting out there, you want to make sure that you do your 1L Financial Foundations course, and it would be easy to knock it off before classes even start. Do that course, attend a couple of our events, and put in the code, because when you get to that 10 entry mark, you are automatically entered into this special drawing that we have on May 1st, which is for one lucky 1L in the country gets $50,000. So we've awarded 2 so far. We started this in the spring of 2023. And you see it's there named the Hannah R. Arterian. Hannah was a former chair of our board, and she was very supportive and instrumental in helping us get Max launched and developed. And she was a former dean of the law school at Syracuse. Unfortunately, she passed away a few years ago, so we named this for her. Next slide, please. So types of financial aid for law school. They're different than undergrad. And if we could go to the next slide, please. Basically, scholarships, employment, and student loans are what is available for law students. Unlike when we are in undergrad, there are no grants from the federal government. There are no Pell Grants. So if you received one of those as an undergrad and you're wondering why that is not part of your financial aid for law school, it's because they don't exist at the law school level. Well, for any education past undergrad, so master's degree, any graduate or professional degree. So basically it's scholarships. The scholarships are internal to the law school. And then there are many external scholarships that you can search on our data bank. They might be need-based, they might be merit-based. Employment is a possibility. And, you know, there are graduate student researchers, and that results in basically a fee remission. And there is the potential for the possibility of some federal work study, and that is dependent. And I'll let Rosanna, if anyone has questions about that, go into that a little more detail. And then the vast majority of students who attend law school have to borrow loans. And about 90% on average of students attending law school are borrowing some student loans. And basically the 2 types that are available are federal loans and private loans. Next slide, please. So I wanted to make sure that you were aware of the scholarship data bank. You can access it from that landing page at Max, but you can also just go to accesslex.org/databank. This data bank contains over $3 million in scholarships that are considered external scholarships. So they are external to the law school. They come from everywhere. They come from law firms, big law firms, small firms, solo practitioners. They come from community foundations, professional organizations, church groups, individuals, corporations, you name it. But what's very unique about this data bank that we maintain is that these are all for law students. So I encourage you to go in there and look around and to do it on a regular basis, because we update the bank about every 1 to 2 weeks. We keep them rotated based on upcoming application deadline dates or just submission deadline dates. And we have a very robust search tool, so it's easy for you to filter to try to find something for which you might be eligible. And we get great reports from students who are finding money in here. If you are a student who is borrowing, which again, about 90% of us will borrow for law school, then every dollar you can find in free scholarship money is one less dollar plus the interest that you will have to pay back. This, we maintain this because we want to make sure that the scholarships are not scams, and we have a very, very robust rubric that we put every scholarship through, and if they meet the rubric criteria, we post them. If they don't get in. Next slide, please. So let's take a look at some of the details on these student loans for law school. Next slide. And what we basically have for law students are 3 different types of loans. We have our federal direct unsubsidized loan, we have our federal direct Grad Plus loan, and then there are private student loans. In terms of applications for these loans, the federal, you have to fill out the FAFSA for the federal loans. So you fill out the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. That automatically will get you in the queue for the federal direct unsubsidized. If you need an additional loan money and you're going to take it from the Fed, then the Grad Plus loan is available. It says credit check there. What they are checking for is they're not evaluating you like they would if you went to apply for a car loan, but they will look at if there's anything adverse, like a red flag. Perhaps you are, have been late on your credit card payments multiple times, or you defaulted on some type of loan or credit. Then they will, that doesn't mean you wouldn't be eligible, but they will require completion of additional paperwork and an explanation. And then there are private loans. Private loans are, they're as unique as our fingerprints. It's whatever the borrower pretty much can negotiate with the lender. They are based on your credit. And so they do due diligence, just like if you walked into a bank and you wanted to borrow money for a car or a home to set up your own practice, you will have to complete their application and whatever system they have for evaluating it, but they will do a credit check on you for that. In terms of how much you can borrow, the federal direct unsubsidized loan is a max of $20,500 per year that you're in law school. There is a limit of $138,500 total, because you can get these unsubsidized direct loans as an undergrad. Very few students reach that $138,500 that are attending law school. So because there are limits at the undergraduate level, and they are much less than the $20,500. So if you need more loan money than the $20,500, then you go to the direct Grad Plus loan next, and that is up to the cost of attendance minus any other free, aka scholarship money, or loan money. So they would deduct your borrowing limit for the direct unsub and any scholarships, and then what's remaining you could borrow up to that amount based on the cost of attendance. Then private loans, they usually have annual limits, but they are set by the lender, and they usually tie them to the school's cost of attendance as well. Interest rates. Interest is set on an annual basis by a formula that Congress voted into law. They have not changed it since 2013. So it's been hanging out there for a while now. But they set the loan rates on July 1st of each year, and those rates will apply to any loan that a student takes out between July 1st and June 30th of the next year. So for example, the loan rates these will start on July 1st, 2024, and they will run through any loans taken out through June 30th of 2025. Once you have the loan at this rate, the rate never changes. It is a fixed rate for that particular loan. So for the coming year, the direct on sub is 8.08 and the Grad Plus loan is 9.08. Again, with private loans, depends on the lender and it depends on your credit. So the better the credit, theoretically, the better the rate you're supposed to get. Repayment options with our federal loans, there are a lot of repayment options, including something called income-driven repayment, which would be based on how much you make on an annual basis and your family size. Repayment options for private loans, it varies. And then forgiveness options, there are some forgiveness options through the federal government, whether it's based on the job that you do. There's something called public service loan forgiveness. And there's also some other forgiveness options inside the features of income-driven repayment plan if you pay for a certain number of years. And with private loans, I don't know of any private loans that forgive your student loans presently. I see Rosanna shaking her head. Yeah, if you know of anything, give me a shout out, but I don't know of any private loans that provide any options for forgiveness. Next slide, please. And we have another awesome tool, accesslex.org/calculator. But again, it's also, you can easily access it by clicking the tile in your Max account. You can put your loans in there and it will generate graphs. It'll show you the amount of interest. I often, very, very often use the calculator when I work with students in a one-on-one coaching. So if you didn't get in this afternoon and you want to make a max coaching and you want to, maybe you took some loans out for undergrad or another degree you might have, we can see where you stand with those. We can estimate what you're going to borrow for law school. We can do a lot of different things so you can see what some of the numbers look like. And I think that's all I have for you today. So I'm going to turn it over to Rosanna. If you have any questions about anything I talked about, go ahead and put them in the Q&A. I'll take a look over there and see what's in there now, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you, Teresa. Yeah, there's a few questions in there now, so great. Appreciate those. If you need me to jump in and answer anything live, I'm not going to check the Q&A because I'm sharing the screen. Just stop me and let me know. All right. So in addition to what was covered with private and federal loans, UC Berkeley does offer an institutional loan that's different. We really only offer the one for bar study. There's some short-term emergency loans that UC Berkeley offers that are 60-day repayment. So I'm not going to go into detail on those, but we do have what many students will utilize upon graduation and planning for the bar. It is for graduating 3Ls, so there's no need to apply for it before then. It is done directly through the Berkeley Law School. So you don't have to have a FAFSA. It's considered institutional, so it's obviously not federal or private, so it wouldn't qualify for any federal repayment options, things like that. But it is a great option if you have utilized maybe all of your loans through federal and you did need to tap into additional funding to get through like the summer, bar study, things like that. So we have changed it. It's actually up to 15,000. I want to say it was about 5,500 a couple years back. So we've been able to increase that. It is a fixed 5.5% interest at this time. And it doesn't look to be changing or increasing anytime soon, which is great. And we do allow a 7-month grace period after it disperses, that you'll have to begin repaying it. It's not paid directly to Berkeley Law. We use a third party. So that is something that, again, as I mentioned, a lot of 3Ls can utilize this to pay for living expenses, bar prep, things like that when you are a lot of times taking off time from work without or little income during that time. So if you are going to take the bar in California, it's kind of already set into your budget. for that 3L year. But if you are taking it outside of California, then that's when you'll want to reach out to us to see if there's any additional cost of attendance adjustments we can do, things like that. So, but this is essentially the only UC Berkeley institutional loan that we provide for law students. All right, so now that you know what loans there are available, hopefully you have a good idea how much. That's usually the question we always get is, well, how do you know how much? Do I borrow it all? I see this big giant number in my Cal Central, do I take it? If I click that little accept button, what's going to happen? Am I going to, sign my life away? The cool thing is I always start by informing my students that it's very flexible. Federal loan borrowing is flexible. And you have to just kind of go through a few simple steps, and then you can always adjust from there. So first step, obviously, is you want to review the student budget categories that make up the COA, or the cost of attendance. So that is going to be things, of course, tuition and fees, and then you have campus fees and things like that that'll also build that, but also the living expenses. So as you can imagine, those will vary from student to student and can be very, kind of daunting in terms of that. But if you look at your budget, you say, okay, I have, gift aid, or I have outside scholarships, and this is my remaining tuition and fees. And then this is now I have a monthly budget for my living expenses. That's usually the easiest way to determine what you need from loans. So, your scholarship, your gift aid, maybe you have other sources. Do you have savings that you're going to tap into for the first year? Maybe you're going to save savings this year and pay for it next year. There's a lot of strategies that you can kind of think of that way. But you want to kind of figure out all the free sources, non-loan sources first, and then you want to determine the remaining. So what's after that? You've calculated the cost of attendance, minus your gift aid, scholarship, savings, and that's going to be potentially your remaining need that you would want to borrow. When you do borrow, it's for the entire year. So that little blue button will go through navigating Cal Central here later. But when you do click that accept button, it is for the entire year, because loans are split semester by semester. So even though you may say need 10,000 for the fall, you're going to need to borrow 20 to be able to be split in half. And we'll get into the technicalities of that here in a few, but few things to keep in mind. Origination fees. So this is a fee that is set by the Department of Education that allows to pay for processing the loans, things like that. The 1.057% is for the direct unsubsidized loans. So that's the amount of $20,500 that you have access to per year. And the 4.228 is the graduate plus loan. So as you can imagine, it would be smart and strategic to borrow first from the unsub and use hopefully a bare minimum of graduate plus loan. This fee is deducted after you accept, but before it disperses. So you want to keep that in mind when you're calculating what you'd need, say, for living costs. That amount is going to be deducted from, and what will actually disperse to your account will be less. So there's a calculation you can do there. With that being said, you can actually modify your loan up to 100 days after disbursement. So thankfully, federal loan borrowing is not set in stone. Once you hit that accept button, don't worry if you've borrowed too much, you haven't borrowed enough. There's flexibilities I'd mentioned. So loan modification is quite very straightforward. 120 days usually is about 4 months, or within the time frame of the semester. So you reach out to our office, or a lot of times we send out a link in a newsletter. It's on our website. You fill out a simple form. You tell us how much you want to return and the type of loan you would like to return. We reach out, we process it, and it essentially then becomes reduced in your account, and you then make a quick payment, and then allows us to return that loan back to your lender. So how that helps is, of course, one, you have less loan, but the interest that would have accrued during that time actually goes away. So you're not responsible for it. And then any origination fees that were charged from the amount that you borrowed are also going to be returned. So you can really save a lot of money if you decide that you don't need as much loan, or maybe you came across some scholarships that you applied for, or, things like that you were able to throughout the year fund, and then hopefully return a portion of those loans so they're no longer in the repayment equation upon graduation. And then one last quick thing, as we mentioned, total aid between loans, scholarships, things like that, everything that goes through the financial aid system is capped at cost of attendance if you're borrowing federal loans or if you're borrowing loans. So if you're not planning on borrowing loans, you can have as much scholarship as you want. So I always say that because it's an incentive, right? If you apply for as many scholarships as possible, go through AccessLex, look at all the different opportunities, and you don't necessarily have to borrow loans, then you're not capped at any aid. But because there is a federal requirement that allows us, and to stick to that cost of attendance, so there's not an over usage, I guess, or whatnot of the loans, that is capped at cost of attendance. So for a quick example, if your cost of attendance is $100,000 a year and you get $50,000 in gift aid, scholarships, things like that, then you'd have between the two loans, $50,000 eligibility, and it would change thereafter. And another quick thing is if you have borrowed your total cost of attendance, meaning you've maxed out, you've got that 50K in aid, but now you've borrowed 50K in loans, any aid that comes in after that, so any scholarships, things like that, will automatically have to lower your loans to keep within that budget. So a lot of students will reach out, hey, I got a scholarship, when's the refund coming? It's like, oh, I look and I say, okay, well, you maxed out your aid, so good news, your loans are going to go down, when really they were like, oh, well, I need that for living and things like that. So those are definitely good conversations to have, because there is a thing called a cost of attendance adjustment that if you, when you speak to our office staff, either myself, Jorge, Aubrey, Lauren, we can advise you on, would you qualify for a cost of attendance adjustment, which then allow that COA to actually be increased, which could allow that gift aid or scholarship to come in and actually refund after you've already maxed out. So real quick on that, but it's don't have a lot of time to go to that today, but it's definitely an option if you find yourself maxed out and even having higher expenses than the average student. So, all right. So with all those nuts and bolts being said, we always want to make sure that you are borrowing the least amount as possible. Loans, I feel like, are pretty easy to get, which is great, but can also be very scary. So just wanting to head into some things, I advise a lot of students, a lot of questions. These are not obviously the only strategies, but these are a lot that our office advises on, students have done successfully, and really helps keep the loan borrowing to a bare minimum. So surprise, surprise, borrow the least amount possible. Definitely easier said than done, right? But there's a lot of strategies that can really, really help. So first and foremost, there is keeping your costs to a bare minimum. So living in the Bay Area, right? Housing, that's always the one that is really big and high on the list. So keeping your housing can be challenging, but it is definitely possible. Just a few things I'm going to kind of rattle off to get through this, but there's graduate housing specifically. Law students are a priority. So it may be full this year, but you could potentially look at next year. I'm not really sure what that looks like, but that's a huge opportunity. It's probably the cheapest rent around, and it's very close to campus. So that's great. You save on transportation and things as well. There's Berkeley student cooperatives or co-ops. There's roughly 20 in the Berkeley area. These are housing opportunities where you live with multiple roommates, you help prepare food, you help with chores, and it really reduces those costs. So a quick Google search, you can get more information on that. Having multiple roommates, shopping around each year, changing your lease. Nobody likes to move, but if you can save a few $100, it would help. And then if you are going to leave during the summer, and a lot of people usually do a lot of externships and things, you could potentially look into subletting your apartment, especially if you have to figure out a way to pay for apartment somewhere else. Utilizing resources like CalFresh, UC Berkeley Food Pantry. We have resources there. Of course, reach out if you have specific questions about how to access those. Applying for residency. So if you are a non-resident and you planning on staying around for maybe even a few years after you graduate, you can apply for residency, and that will automatically reduce your tuition roughly $12,000 per year. And that will be, if approved, for your second and third year. So that's a huge way to save money. And then of course, using summer employment to save costs for the upcoming year, or even to make chunks of payments for your loans that you borrowed previous year, things like that. Oh, that was my second one. Keep living expenses low. Budgeting tools, of course. Ask Edna, AccessLex, a lot of those opportunities. Coaching, of course, as Therese had mentioned. Reaching out to our office, scheduling appointments, just talking through things, talking to other students, your classmates, finding out where they live, maybe how they're keeping costs down, and just really collaborating and sharing those experiences to work on your monthly budget. Scholarships, as I mentioned before, these can replace loans. So a lot of opportunities there. I like to share with students that, year round, you can apply for scholarships. Look all the data banks and things like that as mentioned, but also look where your hometown or your home community where you have roots. A lot of times they have specific graduate scholarships, fellowships, specific to law students even, that are wanting to, provide that educational support for students that are from there. And then also where you plan to practice law or where you plan to work after graduation. There's a lot of scholarships that I've seen in terms of, if you're going to be on the East Coast in New York, or you're going to be in certain county, you can always look to those to find resources for outside scholarships as well. I've mentioned already, returning, modifying your loan within 120 days. This can definitely save hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, not only in the loan amount, but in the origination fees and the interest that would have accrued. So if you don't return within 120 days, that's okay. You can still make a payment to your loan servicer, but that interest and loan fees will not be returned. But you can still obviously return the loans and have any future interest saved by doing that. Shopping private loans for lower rates fees. We do work with a lot of other graduate programs and things around the country and even at UC Berkeley. And we do hear a little bit about, private loans can be different depending on the career path, but also, your previous experiences. Private loans, again, as Teresa mentioned, are very unique. But overall, you could find lower rates, and a lot of private lenders do not have origination fees. So you're saving some money there. But again, it doesn't hurt to shop around. You would have to apply individually. Each lender would have to run your credit. So keeping that in mind each time, but it could be worth it if you have, an opportunity to save there. And then make sure if you are going to be interested in one of the repayment plans, specifically, we have our loan repayment assistance program for Berkeley law students, or the public service loan forgiveness, that you are borrowing federal loans. So private loans, institutional loans, anything does not come through the federal aid, federal student aid, is not eligible for those programs. So that's kind of the only thing you need to worry about if you are planning on participating in these programs, is make sure that you borrow federal. And then there could be a number of other creative strategies, timing of borrowing. I know certain students that they're not really sure their summer employment, whether it's between years or after graduation. So they will maybe borrow the remaining of their loan eligibility at the end of the semester, before things shut down in terms of the enrollment, and will hang on to additional loans for the summer. And then if they're able to provide or have other kind of source of income for that summer, then you have 120 days from the date of disbursement, whether that's the beginning of the semester or the end, to return. So that's another kind of creative strategy that some students have utilized to be able to kind of fund gaps in loan disbursement, but also to be able to return that and not have to worry about the interest rate and origination fees. All right, so accepting your loans in Cal Central is kind of the next step. Again, timing in that, we say usually early July, because there will be a few tasks that you'll need to complete once you accept, but this is kind of a quick run through that. You're going to go to your Cal Central using your CalNet ID login. You're going to click on My Finances. And then usually it's in the middle section when you first pull it up. There's this big button and another hyperlink of View Awards. You want to make sure that you're on the current age year. And this is also a good tool if you wanted to look back at last aid year or whatnot, but that's very specific there. And then if you go down to, you're going to see if there are any other gift aid that's coming in, you're going to see that at the top first, and you'll scroll down to see the loan section. When you see that accept button, don't worry, it's not going to accept the whole 20,500. It will ask you at the next page, how much you want to borrow. And again, this is for the entire year that you're going to be borrowing. So keep that in mind. And then it will show you a breakdown of the origination fee, an estimated amount, so that you can kind of see what that will look like once dispersed after that takes place. And then, as I mentioned, once you submit that acceptance, it's going to trigger a few financial aid tasks that have, in addition to other tasks that you might see on your Cal Central. So you want to go to your dashboard, and then you'll see the different tasks. You can toggle between complete and incomplete. So I think a lot of times it just shows the incompleted up there. So if you're not sure you've done everything you need to do, you can make sure by clicking on completed and seeing all the ones that you have completed. A lot of times you can actually go ahead before you accept and complete the entrance counseling and the master promissory note, which are the two main steps you need to take and complete before loans will disperse. Those are things you can do ahead of time, or you can wait until you hit accept and do that. But that's why we say July is a good time to do that, because aid does not disperse earlier than 10 days before classes begin. So that gives you the entire month of July to get your tasks completed. Anything like that, especially if you're traveling or moving, that can get kind of a busy month for people. So July is a good time. And then if you do have any, run into any issues, you're not sure, whatnot, we can work with you. And then aid disperses 10 days before. And then if you do borrow more than what your balance is, that refund that you're expecting to get will disperse the week that classes begin. So that's just a rough timeline of that. We're going to have some more information coming down the line with specifics on billing and things like that. So just stay tuned for that. But that is essentially an overview of how to accept loans. So this, as I mentioned, we have a couple upcoming opportunities. So we have a scholarship search panel discussion where we're gonna have students come, and it's virtual, talk about their experiences applying for scholarships. You can ask questions, things like that. It's going to be really helpful insights on essays and reference letters and things like that. July 23rd, 3:00. That's the QR code if you want to register. And then July 25th, we're having a billing basics, July 25th at 2:00. So you'll go over, when am I going to see my bill? Oh my goodness, I have a bill. I want to pay it. Why is it just sitting there? Things like that. So we're going to go through everything you need to know to help you become just comfortable and confident in knowing what to expect coming into the year. And then here is just some information of how to get a hold of us. So this is AccessLex website, and then Berkeley Law. This is the QR code in our email if you wanted to schedule appointments. Highly recommended if you haven't already. Even if you have, come talk to us again. Never hurts to just kind of touch base, make sure you're where you need to be. If you have any questions, I always tell my students there's never any stupid questions in financial aid, because it's all about being confident and understanding and knowing what to do. And then so you can be focused and be successful in law school. That's the biggest thing. So here's our info, QR code, save those real quick. And that is all. Thank you guys. How are we doing with the Q&A, Teresa?
So I typed answers to 8 questions and I sent them publicly. So hopefully everyone saw those. There is a question specific to a student about the FAFSA. So if you wrote that, I'm not going to call out your name. I will send that to you, Rosanna's, because it's directed to you.
Okay.
And then there was another question about the availability of the recording for the webinar. And it's going to be captioned, and then it'll be available in about a week, correct?
Yes.
And you'll send them, okay.
And I'll send you a follow-up email.
Perfect. Then another one is, there a specific time you need to accept the loans? So if they don't want to accept them in July or whatever, could they wait till spring semester?
Yes, great question. as I mentioned, flexibility, I forgot to mention that specific detail, but yes, so if you don't need loans, first, because you're just trying to see what your year looks like, maybe you're not really sure your budget, maybe you do have some savings or some outside sources that you're going to utilize and you want to see how far you can get, that's great. I always advise students on, it depends on your spending habits. So if you are good with loan money that you're like, hey, you know what, I'm not sure I'm going to need it, but I want to just grab it just in case and have it kind of sitting there. If you're disciplined enough to do that, great. But if you are like most people that might, oh, look at this money I have here, I recommend no. So leave it in your account, leave it in your bucket. It won't do anything. It won't accept automatically. It'll just live in your account until you need it. So if you were to say borrow, I don't know, in February, right? Like you're in first halfway through the second semester and you're like, I'm not really sure what I'm gonna do for the summer, or my savings is like getting a little low, or whatever your situation is, same thing. You'll need to go in through the steps, you'll accept your loans, and those financial aid tasks that if you haven't already completed them, which is the entrance counseling and signing the master promissory notes, those will need to be done before it'll disperse. So if you haven't done anything, even if you haven't applied for FAFSA yet, you can still do that. There's no deadline for FAFSA. So if you, we've had a few students before come to us, are like, oh no, I need to apply for loans and I don't have a FAFSA. And it's like, it's okay, cool. It'll take about a week or so for your FAFSA to go through as long as it's submitted completely. And then usually your loan award will show up within that time. And then you click the accept button, finish the steps, the tasks, then it usually disperses within like 2 to 3 business days of all those things being completed. So you have access to it pretty quick. But I would say definitely give it a few weeks, especially if you haven't filed a FAFSA. But if you think at all that you might want to borrow something, just have your FAFSA on file. It doesn't hurt to have it on file. That way you have access to those funds throughout the year if you need them. And even if you just need them temporarily, a couple months, then you can return them. As I mentioned, 120-day return. So very flexible.
Awesome. Here's another great question. When during the year should I apply for residency?
Great question. Very specific. We don't process those. It's the Office of the Registrar that does that. So the end of your 1L year, or actually the end of any year, around March is when the Statement of Legal Residence, or the SLR, comes available. You'll submit the SLR through your CalCentral account, and it'll go to the Office of the Registrar. When that application period closes, they review them, and then they'll reach back out to gather documentation. So they have, it's a simple Google search. You can see, search for UC Berkeley, residency for tuition, and it'll come up with what you're supposed to do, documentation, things like that. And that does save a significant amount of money. So if you are able to do that, if not end of your 1L year, the end of your 2L year, you can definitely save.
Here's another great question. It's about, does the interest on federal student loans accrue monthly? It actually accrues daily, but something important to remember about the student loans is it's what's called simple interest. So imagine, if you will, you have 2 buckets sitting in front of you, and the one bucket is the money you borrowed. That's called your principal. They determine, based on your interest rate, how much interest they have to charge you per day. And so imagine this bucket is your interest bucket, and I'm just going to make up a number, but say it's $2.12. Then every day, $2.12, $2.12, $2.12 gets added to the interest bucket. It doesn't get added to your principal, which is called, it gets added to the principal, which is called capitalization, at certain times, but not while you're enrolled at least half time. So the interest is simple. It is charged on a daily basis, and it will sit by itself, not compounding, not added to your principal, until basically until you graduate or drop below half-time status. That was another awesome question. Here's another one for you, Rosanna. When do the loans get dispersed, and when will my tuition payment be due?
Great question. So tuition payments typically due the Friday before classes begin. And any aid, whether it's gift aid, loans, scholarships that have come through our office, will be dispersed no earlier than 10 days before classes begin. So the idea is that you'll have, if you're going to borrow loans early July, you have everything taken care of. They're kind of loaded into your account, so to speak. And 10 days before classes begin, it'll be dispersed and applied directly to your bill. And then your bill will be paid in full by the deadline, which is about a week after that. So again, we have a billing basics webinar we're coming up, so definitely tune into that, and you'll be able to find out all the ins and outs of that time period.
Awesome. Let me take a quick look here. Someone said if we aren't sure if we need loans for the 1L year, but we know for sure we're going to need them for 2L and 3L, would it be best to wait because of the interest accruing? And I would say yes.
Mm-hmm.
The
Right.
longer you can wait to take out the loan, because the interest does start from the time that the money goes from the Department of Education into your account at Berkeley Law. That's when the interest will start. So the longer you can wait to borrow loans, the less interest will, less time will pass, and so less interest will accrue. And I think that those are all the questions. Great questions, group. Yeah, I think those are all the questions. So
Awesome.
I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now, but I did want to thank everyone for joining me. And again, thank you to Rosanna and Berkeley Law for their partnership with AccessLex. And if you want a coaching appointment and you didn't get one this afternoon, head into your Max account. You can make it with me. You can make it with any of my colleagues. We have availability through the end of July, and then we are switching our appointment system. So if you don't see anything after the end of July, that's just because we don't have our new appointment system loaded yet. But I'll go ahead and stop this.